worldwide fans of the planet, Honest Entertainment with an edge. I'm Jaime En Fuego, so stoked to welcome you here to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That's right, you can just call me Fuego for short, and yes, happy to have you here for another Fresca Fuego review. That's right, and this is one that you may be surprised to see me reviewing, but yeah, I love the Shaft films, and this one was not going to be missed by me. Anytime Samuel L. Jackson is definitely getting into this sort of like action comedy and unfiltered R-rated sort of thing, I will definitely not miss it. I saw the 2001 in theaters when it initially came out, and yeah, I can't say I was the biggest fan of like Shaft in Africa or the Shaft Big Score, I think was the second one. Never saw any of the television series, but the original film with Roundtree Man from '71 was just, I guess I'm a Tarantino at heart when it comes to, I love the blaxploitation cinema, man. I think it's a ton of fun. I love where they have actually gone after it in a comedic fashion with stuff like I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, and even more so maybe to a degree with Don't Be a Menace. I mean, Jackie Brown's fantastic, speaking of Tarantino. So I just like to be a student of film when it comes to these things, man, and I loved this movie. I had such a blast with it. It's much more on the comedic / dramatic side, and the action maybe doesn't play as heavy of a part, even though it's in there. But yes, I was not going to be there. I was not going to be missing this. Unfortunately, it came down to, with critic screenings, with the early showing, it was either Shaft or it was MIB International, and even though I liked MIB International, and you can see the review that I did of that with Cecil Laird from The Horror Show over on youtube.com/The Horror Show channel, which is my big YouTube destination. This is my upstart that I'm trying to put some effort back into, but I like this a lot better. I had a ton more fun with this, whereas, I mean, MIB is goofy fun, and I guess to some degree this is as well. I just want to jump right into my classification for these things, so I always do a little bit of bueno, malo, and feo. That's right, good, bad, and ugly. Those are the tropes in the way that I try to frame this and give you just, hopefully just objective perspective when it comes to breaking down a film, and, you know, just give, you know, ugly is the wild card. It can be a little bit of anything, but the bueno is in abundance, as I often like to say here, namely because of the fact that whereas I really enjoyed the John Singleton 2000 version, it was definitely much more of the action, you know, like almost thriller variety, and it was much more akin, at least in that aspect, to the original film. It was originally claimed to be a remake of the '71 Shaft with Roundtree, and then lo and behold, no, Roundtree appears in it as the uncle, which is debunked in this new film because they're like, no, John Shaft II, he is not the nephew, he is actually, and they have a funny bit of dialogue in one particular point when Roundtree finally shows up in the third act, and he's like, yeah, after I finally realized you weren't my uncle anymore, after we had to stop doing that thing. So yeah, we have 3 generations of Shafts in this movie. We don't get Roundtree till the third act. You see him in the trailers though, but when he's there, he's great. But Samuel L. Jackson really and truly epitomizes this, just the swagger and the decaf and the badassness so perfectly in this role, especially as the aged Shaft now, because we haven't seen him in 19 years, and he's a really funny line where they're like, what do you want, John Shaft? And he's like, what do I want? I can't remember the last time somebody asked me that. Well, first and foremost, how about, you know, it was like erectile enhancement cream, you know, at an affordable price, 24 hours with Halle Berry, since why I want the, you know, enhancement cream. It's just, it's funny, man. He has so many choice lines, and yet, I mean, so much just vulgarity of the Samuel L. Jackson variety that he is notorious for. But Jesse Usher, who I just saw recently, it's not out yet, but he is playing A-Train, which is one of the reckless superhero villains in the Amazon adaptation of The Boys. So he's like kind of a bad superhero of sorts, but it's like darkly comedic, The Boys, and it's based on an amazing comic book by Garth Ennis. I had just recently seen him in that. I haven't seen him in anything else, so I can't really claim too much beyond that, but he's great in this. He has terrific comedic presence. He plays this very amusing third generational Shaft that is very much of the millennial variety. Somebody even calls him a millennial at one point in the film when he's walking down the street in New York, mind you, just looking at his phone and not looking at the traffic that could potentially run his ass over. And he's working for the FBI. So you find out at the very beginning of the film that John Shaft II, Samuel L. Jackson's Shaft, he finally is on the verge of a settle down thing, as opposed to just, plowing through the ladies like you always would have expected from Shaft. And there is kind of a hit that is put out at the very beginning of the film with him, his baby mama, and his son, who's just like, not even a year old, obviously, in a car seat in the back. And that's basically where Our Lady draws the line in the sand. And her name is totally eluding me, but she's so funny in so much stuff. She was just recently in Little. She was in Girl Trip. She is a stalwart, badassly funny black actress who just makes me laugh anytime I see her in anything. She's terrific and tremendous. And she plays his love interest in Baby Mama. And basically she's like, you know what, Shaft, I'm not going to put our child through this situation, so unless you're going to walk away from this life, I'm peacing out. I'm going to move upstate, and I'm not going to deal with this shit anymore. And lo and behold, that's what happens. And so she raises him and kind of does the whole motherly kind of sheltering thing a little bit. Son is picked on constantly in school, being, JJ, John Jr., John Shaft Jr., and he ends up having this friend Kareem, who kind of sticks up for him and becomes kind of his protector / best friend of sorts. And our Shaft III ends up at MIT, and he's working for the FBI, and so he's very tech savvy, and yet doesn't like guns, not of the super confrontational variety. And so it's a very fun dynamic when he seeks out his dad's help after not talking to him for tons and tons of years because a friend of his gets killed. And so he's like, I need to, if I'm going to start going through the, Harlem underbelly, I definitely need to consult my father, even if I don't necessarily want to, because I know he has the savvy, the expertise, and the grit and the badassness to actually help me in this process. And their dynamic is the biggest bueno in this entire movie. The way the father-son dynamic in this and the way they play off each other leads to some of the most entertaining and hilarious, where he's constantly giving him crap about the skinny jeans, and he keeps saying, this movie's not PC. I'll get to that in the fail, but he's like, do you like pussy song? Do you actually, the way you're saying it, I don't think you like it. And there are just so many hilarious exchanges in this, and just beat after beat. And that's why, also before I segue into MALO and a little bit of bad, I have to say, soundtrack is terrific. The score is terrific. The funkiness of the score, and of course they interplay it with some really great East Coast hip hop and some soul and some funk and stuff from way back in like the 70s and stuff when Shaft was birthed and everything. But seriously, the score, especially just with the horns and just the hi-hat, the kind of stuff that they do. As a musician myself, I absolutely adored the score in this, and there's lots of callbacks obviously to the previous few Shaft films, and yet they do very, I hate to use the Star Wars example with what John Williams has done, but they took the familiarity of the previous well-known scores and just very much made it their own in this. And the soundtrack is great as well. Lots of killer stuff, and really the look of the film, you've got Tim Story directing this, and a lot of people may be like, ugh, he did those 2 Fantastic Four movies, but that's probably white boys like me who haven't seen stuff like Barbershop or the Ride-Along films, or, I wasn't a big fan of Taxi with Latifah and Fallon, so let's just strike that from the record along with the Fantastic Fours. But, he's shown just an awesome, just keen touch to filming this, and he films the action well once we do actually kind of get to it. And I guess that's where I have to segue into the MALO, is the fact that the story, as far as the writing and the whole father-son thing, that is the core of this film. That is where it is at its best. When we do get the whole, the conspiracy about a mosque and about smuggling drugs and fallen soldiers with all these other factors that they try to plug in, not particularly compelling. It's really not. And it's where the story kind of falters and becomes kind of tedious and boring, is when they try to incorporate the action aspects to it. That's where the film flounders, unfortunately, because it is truly at its best when you have just the back and forth between the father and the son that are so drastically different, and yet as you find out, there is that Shaft similarity. And honestly, as well, when Samuel L. Jackson's having the interactions with Baby Mama, and I just really, really wish I remembered her name, goddammit, because she's fantastic. And she has a very amusing dynamic with Shaft in the fact that she's out trying to see, like, you know, nicer men and whatnot who say okie dokie, and just there's no hood in them whatsoever, and yet, you know, Shaft comes around and he's like, you gonna break a brother up? And she's just like, no, you're reminding me why I stopped my involvement with you, asshole. So, I mean, it's really all of those interactions that make the film so fantastic. It's the drama and the comedy, not necessarily the action. The action really takes a backseat to this, and that is the bad, that's the MALO. And really, honestly, the only MALO that I can think of, because I had so much fun in what makes up the other, like, 65 to 70% of this film, and I love action comedies. I mean, Die Hard I would consider an action comedy, but more so an action movie with comedic elements. If I was to think of one that I really, really enjoyed that balances both very, very well, there's a Marky Mark film that also has Lou Diamond Phillips. It's called The Big Hit. I saw it in theaters in the late 90s. I love that movie. That's where, like, the action is well done and put together, and yet the comedy is definitely at the forefront as well, and it's juggled very well. It's so funny because, like, when it comes to horror, when it comes to action, like, all these different things, even drama to a degree, I really, really love when comedy is mixed in well, and, like, sparingly, tastefully, but yet really well represented, and that's what this film does so exceedingly well. And it was the action that, I mean, once they got to some of it, it's well shot, it's decent, but it's not what the movie is about at the end of the day, which is what might throw some OG Shaft fans off, you know, especially because John Singleton, rest peacefully, his 2000 Shaft was definitely about the action and the thriller aspect and had more of a serious vibe than this one, but I don't know. I had so much fun with this, and the Feo is actually why I also had so much fun with this, because this movie is vulgar, this movie is DGAF, it is very politically incorrect, from the sexualization to just, I mean, the head of the FBI, or at least this particular branch of it in New York where our Shaft III is working, you know, he has one line where he's talking about, you know, I have, you know, perceptions to maintain about the fact that the FBI isn't racially profiling. I have a 7-year-old daughter that wants me to call her Frank. Just stuff like that. And also, you know, Samuel L. Jackson Shaft, you know, asking his son if he's gay over and over and over and over. And, you know, all the different framing devices for, you know, the homo and, you know, pussy and all this different stuff. I mean, hey, it is not going to win any awards for acceptance and tolerance and whatnot. And sometimes it's funny to see that sort of thing. And yeah, just brutalize me in the comments if you don't think. But there's a lot of people out there like it. And it's almost like the whole Archie Bunker mentality in the 70s, where you can find fun in people who are just very just out of sync of that sort of just, you know, walking on eggshells acceptance. And that's one thing that this movie, it does not hold back, and it is just, it's an ugly that works to the film's benefit in my estimation, because this flick, for me, it works so much better as a comedy with dramatic aspects and some action sprinkled in. So yeah, Tim Story has crafted a different tone, but the fact that he has that experience in, you know, very well received, you know, African-American comedies, because if you say black comedy, it's like, okay, you know, that's a dark comedy. That's, you know, something like, I don't know, Very Bad Things or whatever. But yeah, as far as African-American ensemble comedy, dude has been good, very good, in fact. And so I haven't seen any of the ride-along sequels. I know there's a third one coming and there's a second one, whatever. That I was so impressed with Kevin Hart voicing that Snowball character. And I haven't watched a ton of Kevin Hart stuff, but yeah, I've heard his stuff with Haddish and Secret Life of Pets too, and, you know, the voice work was terrific. I don't know. I despite being gringo, obviously, as you can tell, I love comedy from different cultural perspectives. I truly do. I mean, if I'm a white guy named Fuego, for God's sake, I mean, I dig, you know, Latino comedy, and, you know, I mean, hey, I went to a grade school that I like. You know, gringos like myself, we're in the minority, and so that's probably why, you know, I grew up watching, you know, sitcoms like, you know, Martin and Living Single, Yo, and, you know, and still love, you know, even stuff like, oh goodness, Crazy White you know, crazy white, or crazy white, Jesus Christ, crazy rich Asians. Come on, Fuego, get with it. And also, hey, I just like comedy from perspectives different than my own, and so that's one of the reasons why I love the hell out of this movie. And yeah, it's the only white dude in there. Who gives a shit? This movie was great, and I'm sad that they're tracking it not to do as well, especially with its budget. And one last fail to mention is the fact that I read right before doing this review, after coming back from the theater here on Friday, that this, despite being released theatrically by New Line here in the States and stuff, and I think maybe in all of North America, but overseas, like in Europe and Asia and all the spots over there, which obviously, I mean, African-American comedy probably doesn't do very well in Europe, for God's sake, you know. It's going direct to Netflix. And that sucks, man. That genuinely sucks, because I do feel like, especially with some of the action set pieces, this could be better seen on the screen. It's not just a pure comedy that, you know, pure comedies that don't have any big set pieces or anything like that, those are fine to just stream at home and whatnot. But this is one, especially with all of the previous Shaft stuff, you know, going to theaters, and except for the TV series, obviously, that I mentioned. But, I mean, yeah, that's kind of crappy, unfortunately, but based on those regions and sensibilities and tastes, I guess it makes total sense. So at the end of the day here, I am actually going to say that this is I'd probably say 3.5 out of 4 in comparison. So that's tough. I guess I'm going to, you know what? I laughed so much more in this than I have in any movie in probably this year that I've seen. So I am going to go 4 out of 5. Yeah, that's right. This is a Fuego film, second straight one that I've seen. Maybe I'm being a little generous, because this would be a 3.5 out of 5. But hey, I'm just going to give it to it because Samuel L. Jackson, for so many specific scenes, had me dying in the theater laughing. Him as this character, it's a better performance, I think, and I don't know, it's a much more rounded performance in a lot of ways than what we got out of him in the 2000 Singleton film. So, yes, 4 out of 5, certified Fuego, as you see below. And I have been Jaime En Fuego. And you can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, obviously here on YouTube, where porfa y gracias. Hit the subscription thing and ring the bell so you get notifications about the few times a week when I do new videos here. I am in the process of finishing a Star Wars novel, which is all about Queen Amidala as she's transitioning to being a senator, which is very interesting, and that's going to be coming as part of my complete canon coverage of Star Wars. Yes, I am a geek at the end of the day, but I love all forms of cinema. I also have some comic reviews for Star Wars and have been doing one film every month leading up to the episode 9 release. That's right, in December. And if you like the spooktacular stuff, I do, I mean, multiple videos every single week, because as a producer and host of the horror show, along with our fearless leader and showrunner Cecil Laird, two awesome ladies in Marsha Parker and Susie Von Slaughter, we do, a couple videos every day all about the spooktacular at youtube.com/the horror show channel, just like you see below. And trailer reactions, film reviews, television reviews, video game reviews, comic book reviews, convention coverage. I mean, yes, we are vigilant with the spooktacular, and we are so very happy to do it. So I guess that is going to be the end of the proceedings here, because I do have one more film to see this weekend, which is Late Night, if I'm not mistaken, which has a girl from The Office and Emma Thompson, I want to say her name is. I keep thinking Emma Roberts, but no, Emma Roberts is the bitchy, skinny white chick from Scream 4 and a few other things. But American Horror Story Season 3, Bitchcraft, good stuff. But yes, I guess I will do the sign off now. And thank you, gracias, danka, arigato, once again for coming. And until the reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, cinemigos, and constant readers and viewers alike. Well, you're not reading anything here with me, but sometimes you do on Enfuegotainment. But I'm hopeful that we get to reconnect sooner rather than later. Peace!